Hello, and this is Kurokami, and I'm back for yet another Junji Ito Anime Collection review. And today we are going over episode 9. And before anything, if you haven't watched the anime or read the manga, spoiler warning is in effect, because I go over the entire episode. Let's just hop right into it. Without further ado, let's get creepy. Okay, so the first part of the episode was the manga chapter called Painter, and the manga had 39 pages. And I'm going to kick this off right now. This episode was a lot better with the animation quality, especially this part of the episode. The other part was still good, but just not as good. I was so happy, because this one is about Tomie. And for those who don't know, Tomie is part of a large collection of its own. It's from a completely different collection from what the other stories are from. So it was really interesting that they actually did include this episode in there. Yeah, I love the anime actress for Tomie, the voice actress. Such a beautiful voice. Fit her like a flippin' charm. The anime understands you don't know crap about Tomie. So, in the manga, they kind of like tell you all that Tomie is doing all this at the beginning, but in the anime, they don't. Because they understand that you don't know anything about Tomie. They need to cater to the anime viewers, which is really good. Like in the manga, this chapter was like halfway into it, so you already knew a lot about Tomie at this point of the manga, but walking into the anime, you don't know anything, so good job, anime. Good job. Really, nothing was left out of this episode. There was only like one scene, and that was about Nana returning, and that was only one page, so you're not missing anything. But besides that, it was a near perfect part of the episode. Without further ado, let's start the story. Isn't this painting splendid? It's my masterpiece. I call it Tomie. I do have talent as a painter, as you can plainly see, but society is blind as ever. They just can't see Tomie's true beauty, and because of that, my reputation has plummeted as an artist. Tomie, she's the best model I've ever had. I'll never forget the first time I saw her. It was at the opening of my third exhibition. It was all her fault. If it wasn't for that terrifying girl, I would still have fame as a successful artist. Oh, poor Mr. Mori. He had everything, so what happened to cause his eventual downfall? Who is this Tomie girl? It was the night of his third exhibition, and all was going smooth. After all, Mr. Mori was even able to sell all of his paintings at the show. The Nana series, all based on the beauty that skyrocketed his fame in the first place. It was her who gave Mr. Mori so much inspiration to create such splendid works. He was now a star. Loads of screaming fans would be the norm for someone of his caliber. As our superstar began signing autographs for his beloved fans, something caught his eyes. A mysterious woman with long black hair and an undeniable beautiful face stares blankly at one of his works. Curious, he asks the woman what she thinks of his painting. To his surprise, instead of the normal gawking he is used to, this girl shows no mercy. She looks a bit foolish, the girl snickers as she straight laughs at the painting. You would do better with a new model, she continues to say under her breath. That was all that needed to be said. It was a usual session. Nana lays on the chair as Mr. Mori painted away, but all was different. Now even Mr. Mori was beginning to see his model as a little bit foolish. Ha 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 ha! An abrupt laughter enters the room. It was that woman from the other day. She not only found out where he lives, but has also come in unannounced. Without explanation, the woman begins asking why Mr. Mori is still using the same model he said was no good and was replacing with her anyway. In obvious lie, Mr. Mori tries to defend himself, but this woman continues to spout nonsense which only further escalates the confusion. Outraged, Nana storms off, cutting her ties with the artist. Acting as if she was actually doing Mr. Mori a favor, the beauty offers herself as his new model. Having no other options, Mr. Mori is forced to accept. Call me Tomie. the woman pronounces as she reclines, taking her place as Mr. Mori's new focus. Quickly, Tomie begins to reveal her true colors. She does not care about Mr. Mori at all. No, she simply wants to see if he is able to capture her true beauty on canvas, something no other artist before has been able to do. According to Tomie, no girl in the world is as beautiful as her, so this is Mr. Mori's only shot to create a true masterpiece. As he begins to paint, he jokes, "Why not have your picture taken? They are much more accurate." That, however, won't do. Even photos cannot capture Tomie's true beauty. That is why it's Mr. Mori's job to preserve her beauty forever. Finally, after a week of continuous work, the painting was complete. Mr. Mori thought it turned out great, so of course Tomie would think the same, right? Though to the artist's surprise, after one quick view, Tomie breaks into laughter. "This doodle doesn't capture a tenth of my natural beauty," the woman snickers. Disappointed with Mr. Mori, Tomie sets out. If he cannot capture her beauty, then someone else will. Mr. Mori is in complete disbelief. How can she not like this masterpiece? After having his talent kicked in the mud, Mr. Mori begins slowly going crazy. Tomie haunting him with those piercing eyes every time he stares at the painting. Not even Nana, after returning, could return Mr. Mori back to who he once was. He had no inspiration anymore. Tomie had put a curse on him. If Mr. Mori could not get inspiration from anyone else, what if he were just to paint Tomie from memory? It was sure to work, wouldn't it? No! Something was off. It was not right. This doesn't capture Tomie's beauty at all. Hitting rock bottom, Mr. Mori found himself getting drunk at bars most of the time. Tomie the only thing that goes through his head. That's when Masuda, one of Mr. Mori's old art friends, decides to pay him a visit. Worried since his buddy hasn't been producing art recently, Masuda asks if Mr. Mori is doing alright. After starting some small talk, Mr. Mori hears something a little bit surprising. Turns out Takao Iwata, a small-time sculptor, has begun getting really popular recently. Turns out it's thanks to a beautiful new model that he has gained quick success. As expected, this woman just so happens to be Tomie thanks to a picture Masuda shares. The only strange thing is how weird Tomie looks in the photo. Must be a blur, right? That's the only explanation why an extra face is protruding off of Tomie's, right? Still, there's no way someone like Iwata could reproduce Tomie's beauty if even Mr. Mori could not. He would just have to go and see for himself then. Pounding on Iwata's door, Mr. Mori demands to see the sculptor's work. The door then slowly creaks open, and to Mr. Mori's surprise, a shriveled husk of a man emerges from the darkness. What happened to this once spunky artist? Seems like Iwata has turned into a shut-in. Tomie was his now, and he was not going to share her with anyone, even if it meant not selling a single new sculpture. Desperate to the point of insanity, Mr. Mori strikes Iwata down with a nearby statue, killing the man after Iwata refused to let him in. Mr. Mori dashes through the dark house, but is completely shocked when he discovers a mountain of broken sculptures, all having the resemblance of Tomie. Then, there she was. It is Tomie herself. Before Mr. Mori can speak a single word, Tomie jumps at him into an embrace as she breaks into tears. Iwata was going to chop her into pieces and smashed all of the statues as well. Mr. Mori tells her it's going to be alright. He will capture her on canvas for sure this time. It's time for round 2. Mr. Mori was filled with such joy and excitement, he could barely contain himself. Quite relaxed herself, Tomie explains it is quite odd, but for some reason every man that falls in love with her tries to kill her, intent on chopping her into pieces. The very next second, "It's done!" Mr. Mori screams. But what was this? If Mr. Mori failed to capture Tomie's beauty the first time, then he without question failed even worse this time. Just like the photo, a second head protruded from Tomie's, looking extremely vile. Melted skin, slit neck, and dread-filled faces, Tomie was now turned into the farthest thing from a model. A monster! Complete disgust filled Tomie's face. Unable to even stare at the painting, she quickly knocks it out of Mr. Mori's hands. Not only is he the worst painter ever, but he has made a complete fool out of her. Tomie doesn't look like that monster at all. Mr. Mori is in complete disbelief. There's no way he has failed. This is a masterpiece. There's no denying it. That, however, did not stop Tomie from breaking into laughter at the delusion of this artist. Mr. Mori has had enough of it. He has been through too much hell to take this woman's blunt mockery. Without a second thought, he wraps his hand around Tomie's throat, strangling her. Hack! 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 Mr. Mori chops Tomie into pieces. She was most certainly dead now. But after staring at the corpse for days, on the fourth day, the body began to mutate. Each limb began growing a face of its own. Yes, Tomie began to grow like a cell, each piece growing into their own version of Tomie. As for Mr. Mori, he grows weak. Unable to move, he gets thinner and thinner. Tomie. Okay, so the second part of this episode was based on the manga chapter Blood Bubble Bushes. And this manga chapter was 61 pages. Now, again, I just want to give props to the anime. This story had to cut out a lot, but the way they presented it in the anime made it so what they cut out wouldn't hinder your experience viewing the episode. You can view this episode and think it's good. Then you can read the manga and you're like, oh, that's what they cut out, that's pretty cool. But you still enjoy the anime. So, director, whoever put this together, good job on that. Now, again, just like I said, they cut out a lot from this episode. So, I'm going to go piece by piece. So, like, the first thing is the opening scene. They're driving down the road, and this red splat hits their windshield and crashes the car. They don't show that. The next thing is there's a bigger fight that they have with the boys. You'll see them soon. And there are a couple other things, but I don't want to go too far into them because I haven't went over it yet, so I don't want to hinder your experience. But there is one big thing at the end where certain characters don't reappear that do at the end of the manga. Oh, and the biggest thing of all, our main character meets a man, and in the manga, he says, "Save me, save me." But in the anime, he decided to have a change of heart and say, "Run away, run away." So that's pretty much it for this episode, so let's get into it. Speeding down a mountainous road in the middle of nowhere, young Ansai disregards the danger that he is putting himself and his girlfriend Kana in. Even after the whines from the girl, Ansai is dead set on living life his way. That's when something splats on their windshield, causing the car to smash into a nearby tree. Luckily, the two turn out to be alright, but what about the red splat? Blood? Maybe they hit a bird or something. Regardless of what they hit, it does not change the fact that the car fails to start, so the couple is forced with one option: hike on foot to find some help. After an hour of hiking and finding nothing, something finally catches their eyes. A hut. A couple of kids are huddled together inside. Must be playing a game or something. Out of other options, Ansai asks the boys if there are anyone nearby with a phone. The boys seem a little strange though. Blank stares and completely silent, one can't help but to feel at least a little uneasy about these kids. One of them finally speaks up only to say that there are no telephones nearby. Well, how about a main road? Ansai asks. At this point, the group is simply snickering at each other, totally ignoring Ansai's question. Whatever, he's had enough of these creeps. Let's go, Kana, Ansai proclaims, and so the couple sit right back to square one. That is, until not too long after, they turn around to find a group of boys following them. Again, just blankly staring at them. What's wrong with these kids? Then, out of nowhere, the group of boys dashed the two after seeing the blood from Kana's neck after they initially hit her with a vine. The kids begin growing monstrous. Pupils dilated, teeth showing, saliva running. The boys spring into attack like animals. Luckily, Ansai is able to fight them off, and after a couple of minor wounds, the couple is free as the boys dash back into the bushes. Still processing how crazy those kids were, that's when they see it. Roofs. It's a village. Upon further analysis, it becomes plainly apparent that this must be a deserted village. Smashed windows and decaying walls. What happened here? Then Kana points out something truly frightening. Multiple bloodstains lay covering a wall. Then, what? A puddle of blood lay in the middle of the road? And what's more, it's fresh. There even seems to be skin in it. Seeing a trail coming from the spot, Ansai decides to follow it, falling prey to his own curiosity. The couple is finally faced with a lone door at the end of the line. Surprisingly enough, a relative young man opens the door when Ansai begins to knock. He quickly explains their situation and asks for a phone. Unfortunately, the boy does not have one but does offer assistance with their wounds. The stranger explains that he is the only one who lives in the village and that those troublesome boys often come out of nowhere to cause mischief. Since the sun will set soon, the couple decides to stay there for the night after their ever-so-nice host offers, even feeding them dinner as well. Turns out that this place has been abandoned for some time, as it still was even after the man had moved here a few years ago. A perfect place for a man having emotional difficulties. Seems like this strange man has taken quite a liking to Kana, as she resembles a person he was ever so close to. It's a sad yet bizarre story. She was a lonely woman. Everyone's avoiding me. Everyone hates me, and so I'm always alone. And even you'll become like them, hating me, and as the days go by, you'll leave me, was this girl's favorite saying. She was always a loner, and even though the man tried his best to help, nothing seemed to work. The woman's delusions escalated to the point where she even convinced herself that her own blood was trying to leave her. Hell-bent on, quote, letting her blood gain its freedom, the woman attempted to slit her own throat. Luckily, catching her in the act, the man was able to intervene. Thanks to his bold yet strange method, he was able to save her life that day. It was then where the two confessed their love to each other. But, unfortunately, the girl was still destined to die early. Not long after, vein-like branches began to sprout from the girl's wound on her neck, each ending with fruit-like bubbles that were filled with blood. Turns out, her blood really was trying to leave her. It wasn't long after where all of the blood in the girl's body eventually left her, leaving the girl a husk of a corpse. That night, Ansai wakes up from his slumber but notices Kana is not in her bed. Confused, Ansai sets off to find her, only to stumble across a bizarre scene. The strange man had Kana and begins sucking her bloody wound like a vampire. Ansai chases after them when they walk away, but because of his dizzy state, he stumbles to the floor. That's when he sees it. A trail of blood spots. The same as the ones that led them to this place. Where they took him shocked Ansai to the core. A room filled with these blood bubbles. Ansai then hears a voice behind him. It's the stranger. He goes on to say that all of these are from his beloved, that when he traveled here, he brought her with her and she blossomed into a tree, even bearing fruit. Oh, and that blood trail? It must have been from one of the blood bubbles trying to leave her, just as she always said. Ansai, however, though thoroughly creeped out, just wants to know where Kana is. What are you talking about? Isn't Kana resting in the same place you are? The man asks. Convincing Ansai that he was dreaming the whole thing, the stranger heads back to bed, telling Ansai to do the same. Out of nowhere, Ansai hears a voice. Save me! Save me! Where could this possibly be coming from? When Ansai looks over, to his horror he sees a husk of a person calling out to him. He then begins to speak about what really is going on here. He was one of the villagers that used to live here, and it was the stranger who caused all of this. He used a scary spell causing all of the villagers to sprout these fruits of blood. After being buried here, he was able to summon all of his strength just to reach the surface. Another was able to escape yesterday, but odds are they didn't make it far anyway. This is not where his lover is buried. No, this is where the entire village is buried. But what is this spell? When he gives your wound a kiss while you're unaware of it, these stems of blood bubbles will start budding from the wound, and soon you will turn into a mummy. The only way to stop it is for you to eat your own blood bubbles, but then you yourself will lust for blood, in fact too turning into a vampire. Some of the villagers as well as some of the kids ate their own bubbles and eventually turned into bloodsuckers. No, this had to be a dream. Ansai rushes out to check on Kana, and alas, she is sitting on her bed perfectly fine. Ansai does not care. They are getting out of here. The sun is rising, so they should be okay. The couple rushes to the front door, only to bump into their good friend. He cannot let them leave. After all, look how beautiful Kana's neck is. They are destined to become husks to bear their own fruit, and thanks to the spiked alcohol, they are in no condition for running away. Then, out of nowhere, an axe pierces the door. It's the boys from earlier, and they are desperate for blood. This was their chance. Ansai and Kana could finally escape. The boys feast on the blood bubbles, indulging their urges. Not even the cries of one of the boys' fathers could stop them. Then, out of nowhere, a pitchfork pierces one of them through their chests. This was not their fruit, and the stranger was not going to sit by and watch. The couple further and further makes their escape from this forsaken place. But Kana is getting worse, and even Ansai is infected as bubbles begin to bud from his very own hand. Then the unthinkable happens. Kana begins drinking her own blood. So anyway, that's been episode 9 of the Junji Ito Anime Collection review. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content in the future. This is Kuro Kami, and I'm signing off.